That her? They actually squeezed her into the final round?
You. Nadia Voss didn't turn around. He stepped forward, voice climbing.
Hey, I'm talking to you.
She set her bag down, slowly, no rush.
You know what this is, right? Executive protection, not a yoga class.
I read the job description. What's your next question?
Drake opened his mouth, then closed it. Near the far wall, a man named Jerome Reeves, who hadn't said a single word since walking in, dropped his chin slightly. Nobody saw him smile, but he smiled, and that was how it started. There are rooms you walk into and know immediately that the verdict has already been delivered. Not because the people inside are evil, but because they've spent so long seeing the world one way that anyone who doesn't match the picture gets processed as a problem before they've done a single thing. I don't know if you've stood in a room like that, but I know this story is going to hit something real, whoever you are, wherever you're watching from. Nadia Voss, 31 years old, walked into the Houston offices of Meridian Executive Security on a Tuesday morning in September, carrying worn gloves, hair pulled tight, zero makeup. Not because she didn't care how she looked, because she hadn't come here to be looked at. She'd come here to be evaluated. Those two things are entirely different, and she'd understood that difference for a long time. 9 years in private protection work, not the glamorous kind, not the kind you post about, the kind that took her to places people only hear about after something goes wrong. The kind with no press release, no glossy badge, no one patting her on the shoulder saying good job. She grew up in 5th Ward, moved twice before she was 8, and learned to read a room the way some kids learn to read weather as survival, not hobby. She hadn't listed half her experience on the application. Half of it wasn't on paper. The other half wouldn't have made sense to anyone who hadn't been there. She brought worn gloves. She wore clothes she could move in. And when she walked into that room, she knew immediately, precisely exactly what she was walking into. Selena Okafor, head of recruitment, arrived with the controlled energy of someone who had professionally managed male egos for a decade and had exactly zero patience left for them. Sharp, direct, the only person in the room who made eye contact with Nadia when she spoke. Selena moved through the format quickly. Final screening, real-world simulation, CEO observing, close quarters assessment, pattern recognition under pressure. The man Nadia had already clocked loud, central, pulling orbits around himself the way dominant people do without trying his name, was Drake. He raised his hand before Selena finished speaking. "I want him," he said, pointing at the biggest candidate in the room. The big man grinned. They were already performing. Nadia pulled on her gloves slowly, deliberately. The leather was cracked at the knuckles. She liked it that way. Selena called for pairs. The room shuffled. Men chose each other fast, with the confidence of people who already knew their place in the hierarchy. Nobody moved toward Nadia. One beat passed, then another. Drake turned and looked at her, grin widening slow. "Nobody's lining up," he announced, loud enough for the whole room. "Guess today's your lucky day." A few people laughed. The man with the neck tattoo shrugged. "I'm not trying to get disqualified for an HR violation." More laughter. Selena's jaw tightened. Nadia didn't react. She stayed exactly where she was and waited because she'd learned a long time ago that patience in moments like this isn't passive. It's a statement. Then a voice cut through. Quiet. Grounded. "I'll take her." Jerome Reeves stepped forward, adjusting his wrist wrap, not looking at Drake. Lean, controlled, the kind of stillness that told Nadia he'd trained somewhere serious. "You ready?" he asked her. She nodded once. "Let's go." They stepped onto the mat. The room leaned in. Drake watched from the side, arms crossed, smile fixed in place. 5 seconds, he muttered under his breath. Nadia heard it. She let it pass through her without landing. What she did instead was look at Jerome and notice the slight forward weight on his left foot, the small rotation in his right shoulder, the controlled quality of his breathing. Jerome was good. He was being calibrated, not dismissive. That was rare. She noted it. Selena raised her hand. "Begin." Jerome moved first, a clean test jab, controlled speed, no malice. Nadia slipped it, not dramatically, not with any extra movement. She simply moved her head 2 inches and let it pass. A small sound moved through the room. Jerome followed with a low feint, weight transfer, watching for a tell. Nadia kept her gaze soft and wide, tracking everything without fixing on any single point. Jerome stepped in a second time faster, closing distance, looking to establish position. Nadia moved. Not back. Forward. A tight pivot that put her inside his reach before he finished the thought. Her hands came up clean. Redirect, not block. She hooked his wrist, shifted from her hip, and took him down. Controlled. Guided. She made sure he landed safe. He hit the mat hard but clean. Her knee pinned his shoulder, hand pressed just under his jaw. Perfect angle. In a real situation, the conversation would already be over. Selena said stop. Nadia stepped back immediately. Jerome lay still for a moment, blinking. Then he laughed short and genuine. Okay, he said, sitting up. I did not see that coming. He reached up a hand. She pulled him up. That was clean, he said quietly. Thank you, she said. Behind her, nothing. That was new. Drake broke the silence first. He slipped, he announced. That's all that was. Jerome looked at him. No, he said simply. It wasn't. Drake pushed off the wall, rolling his neck, already moving toward the mat before Selena could redirect the room. All right then, he said, looking at Nadia. Come on, you want real evaluation, here it is. Selena glanced up at the observation window above the floor. A silhouette stood there still, watching. She exhaled. Fine. Controlled engagement. Drake grinned. He cracked his knuckles. Don't worry, he said to Nadia, his voice carrying the easy confidence of someone who had never once been doubted on the basis of his size. I'll make it quick. Here's the thing about Drake, and I want to be fair. Because he is not a cartoon villain, and this story doesn't work if you think he is. He wasn't cruel for the sake of cruelty. He was someone who had built something real, who had earned his way into rooms like this one through actual sacrifice and actual work. But somewhere along the way, the thing he'd built started to depend on something fragile. Everyone around him being less. Not because he was malicious, because that was the only math he knew. When Nadia stepped onto that mat, he wasn't thinking about her. He was thinking about what her presence meant. And fear wearing the costume of aggression, that is the most dangerous thing in any room. Selena raised her hand. Begin. He didn't test. He came in hard and fast, full commitment, aggressive entry, the kind of move designed not just to win, but to announce. It worked on most people. Most people felt that wave of force and went backward. Nadia went sideways, a quarter step, a small redirection of the angle, her foot behind his, and then one clean transfer of weight. He hit the mat harder than Jerome had. Faster. Before the room could process it, her forearm was already across his throat. Controlled pressure. Exact. His eyes went wide. 5 seconds. She stepped back. The room did not make a sound. Not a whisper, not a laugh, not a single audible breath. Drake rolled onto his side. Slowly. Nadia walked back to her original spot, the same place she'd been standing since she walked in like nothing had happened. Because from where she stood, nothing extraordinary had. If you have ever been in a room where people decided who you were before you opened your mouth, if you have ever carried real capability that no one bothered to look for, then you know what that silence meant. Not victory, recognition. The moment the room finally looked up and saw what had always been standing there, Selena called the next phase, scenario simulation. The energy had shifted completely quieter now, more watchful, recalibrated. The simulation was engineered for chaos. Alarms, a staged client to extract, hostile actors, incomplete information. The kind of environment where loud confidence gets people killed and patient observation gets the client home. Drake took command instantly, voice cutting through the noise. Left corridor, move. I've got the lead. Half the room followed. Nadia didn't. She stood inside the simulation threshold and watched. The overhead lighting had a specific flicker, not random, patterned every 11 seconds. The hostiles were staggered, not simultaneous. And the client, an actor in a charcoal suit, kept glancing, briefly, barely perceptibly, toward the far right exit. Not the left. Not where everyone was heading. That glance meant something. Jerome drifted back toward her. You're seeing it too, he said quietly. It wasn't a question. Split trap, Nadia said. They want us to commit to speed, not accuracy. Jerome frowned toward the left corridor, where Drake's voice was already echoing with certainty. He's going to walk right into it. I know, Nadia said, and moved. She tried once. Wrong exit, she called out. Nobody stopped. Drake's voice came back confident, commanding, absolute. Stay in your lane. Then the lights died. A sharp impact sound cracked from the left corridor. Someone on Drake's team yelled. Too late. Nadia was already moving right Jerome 3 steps behind her, her grip on the client's arm firm and controlled. Eyes forward, she told him. Don't think. Just follow. Behind them, she could hear Drake calling for a fallback, his voice carrying a different quality now strained, operating from reaction instead of intention. A second hostile cut across their path, no hesitation. She timed the redirect, pivoted through the lunge, dropped him clean. Jerome covered the rear, eyes wide, not fear, recognition. She saw it early, he muttered to himself. They reached the secondary exit, locked. Of course. Nadia handed the client off to Jerome, stepped back, took one breath, hit the latch point precisely, and the door gave. Move. They exited, clean, intact, silence. Then Selena's voice steady and unmistakably waited. Time. When Drake and his group stumbled out of the other corridor disheveled, processing failure in real time, his eyes went straight to Nadia. Before anything else. You broke formation, he said. You made them stop. I corrected the mistake, Nadia said. You think you're better than everyone in this room? And here, if you watch closely, something shifted in Nadia's face. Not anger, not satisfaction. Something closer to sadness, because she recognized what was really being asked. He wasn't talking about the simulation anymore. He was asking something older than that, something that had been building since the moment she walked in the door. Nadia looked at him. I think you were wrong, she said. Just that. And it landed harder than any insult she could have thrown. Jerome shook his head quietly behind Drake. That was pattern recognition, man. Drake turned on him fast. You switching sides? I'm on the side that gets the client out alive, Jerome replied. Nothing else. The room went quiet again. The final round. One-on-one protection. Real time. No script. No guidance. The CEO, Marcus Webb, would be the client. No security buffer. No briefing, just a man walking into the room and Nadia having to make every right decision in front of everyone who had already decided she couldn't. Selena told her she was up first. Of course she was. The door opened and Marcus Webb walked in. Sharp, measured, the kind of presence that fills a room without trying. He stopped a few feet from Nadia. You're the one they've been discussing, he said. I'm the one assigned to you, she replied. Something shifted in his expression, subtle, approving. Good answer. Her earpiece crackled. Multiple unknowns. Variable positions. She stepped closer to Marcus Webb, just enough to control the space without alarming him. Stay within arm's reach, she said quietly. Don't argue with the movement. He didn't argue. Across the room, Drake watched with his arms folded. Let's see her fold. The first threat moved obvious, slow. A man near the back reaching inside his jacket with all the subtlety of someone who'd never done it for real. Distraction. Nadia didn't engage. Decoy, she said under her breath. Marcus Webb's eyebrow moved a fraction. Then the real threat came. A woman, fast and low, closing distance with genuine intent. Nadia moved before she finished the approach. Intercept, redirect, control. The attacker hit the floor before most people in the room fully registered the movement. Nadia didn't stop. Her head was already turning. Second contact, left flank. She pulled Marcus Webb with her. Stay with me. Another movement closer than it should have been, inside the inner perimeter. Someone had threaded through. Sharp elbow, weight transfer, down. 3 threats, 9 seconds total. She stepped back. Clear. The room froze. Drake's arms uncrossed. He started clapping. Slow. Not admiration. Frustration was woven underneath it. Audible if you were listening. All right, he said, stepping forward. That was cute. Put her against me. No script. He looked up at the observation room. What about you? Marcus Webb held his gaze long enough to make the room feel the weight of it. Real, he said, but controlled. Selena hesitated, then nodded. Drake stepped onto the mat. And this time he wasn't grinning. No performance, no audience play. He looked at Nadia with something nobody had seen from him all day. Not arrogance. Something quieter. He was going to actually try. 5 seconds again? He said. Not a taunt. Almost a question. Nadia stepped forward. Same calm. Same silence. But something had sharpened in the room, everyone watching differently now. Not to laugh, not to judge, to learn. Begin. He circled. Patient. He learned something finally. No rushing, no domination play. He watched her the way she'd been watching everyone else all day. Good. That's better. They were both quiet, both reading. A feint left no reaction from Nadia. He stepped in. She adjusted. A quick exchange, faster than before, harder, with real stakes behind it now. He pushed, tested different angles, tried to force the error. And then he got something real. A genuine grab on her arm, real weight behind it, actual positional advantage. A sound moved through the room. Drake grinned. Got you. For half a second, it looked true. Then Nadia moved. Not with force, with precision. A small rotation of her wrist, a fractional change in angle, and his grip became his problem. His balance broke, his hand slipped. Before he could reorganize his footing, she had already turned it completely, cleanly, without hesitation. He hit the mat hard. Air left him. She pinned him, same position, same exact geometry as both times before. 5 seconds. She looked down at him. Because you needed to win, she said. I needed to be right. She released him and stepped back. Drake lay there longer than anyone expected. Not because he was hurt, because standing up meant accepting what had just happened, not just this moment, but the whole day, all the way back to the second he looked at her walking through that door and decided everything he needed to know. He stared at the ceiling. You could see it working across his face, the slow, uncomfortable recognition of the exact moment the day had turned against him. Not when he hit the mat the first time. Not when the simulation failed. The moment he assumed he already knew everything worth knowing about everyone in that room, standing up meant accepting that. So he stayed down a little longer. Marcus Webb's voice came from above. Quiet. Final. Decision made. The room emptied in stages. Selena announced results shortly, and people drifted, some disappointed, some still processing, all quieter than when they'd walked in 3 hours ago. Nadia sat on the bench and pulled her gloves off, one finger at a time. Her hands were steady. They were always steady afterward. That's one of the things she'd learned about herself the adrenaline didn't hit her during. It came later, alone, usually in the car. Right now, she was just present. Jerome came and leaned against the wall near her. You gonna tell me where you actually learned all that? I already did, she said. Life isn't a location, he said. It is when it's all you've got, she replied. He looked at her for a moment. You've been in real situations. Yes. Not controlled, no. He nodded slowly. That settled something for him that words couldn't have. Across the room, Drake stood alone. The neck tattoo man walked up quietly beside him. She's different, man. Drake shot him a look. Don't. I'm serious, the man said. That wasn't normal. Drake exhaled hard. I had her. You saw it. The other man just said, you thought you had her. That was everything. That was the whole day in 5 words. Drake didn't respond. He already knew. When Marcus Webb walked back into the room, the air changed. He spoke without preamble. 15 years hiring security, military, special operations, private contractors. Resumes that read like action films. And almost every time, the same pattern of failure. His eyes moved across the room, pausing briefly on Drake. Overconfidence wearing the costume of capability. A pause. Then, underestimation wearing the costume of judgment. His gaze reached Nadia not long. Just enough. Nadia Voss. A single beat of quiet. You're hired. She nodded once. Not relief. Confirmation of something she had always known, had carried alone through enough rooms and enough Drakes that she'd had to learn how to hold it without anyone handing it back to her. Jerome Reeves, he continued. You adapted. You followed the right signal when it mattered. That matters here. You're in. Jerome straightened slightly and nodded once. The rest of you, Marcus said, and here he slowed down, made them hear every word didn't fail because you lacked skill. He looked at Drake. You tried to win the room. He let it sit. In this job, you don't win rooms. He picked up his jacket. You protect lives. He was gone before anyone thought to speak. Drake walked toward the exit. Stopped. Turned around. Looked at Nadia across the room. A moment passed where it felt like he might say something defensive, something sharp. He didn't. "You're good," he said finally. Quiet. No performance, no audience. Just honest. Nadia met his eyes. "So are you," she said. "But you have to see first." That surprised him. He held her gaze for a second, nodded once, then left. Not the same man who walked in. Selena came and stood beside Nadia. "You made that look easy." "It wasn't," Nadia replied. Selena tilted her head. "You didn't show it." "I don't need to," Nadia said. Selena smiled slightly, the first real one all day, and walked out. Marcus Webb lingered. He asked why she wanted the job. She said, "Stability. Not passion, not ambition. Just the honest truth of where she was in her life and what she needed next." He respected that. He told her it wouldn't be easy. She told him it never had been. He told her she hadn't just passed. He said she'd changed the standard. Then he left too. Jerome was the last one out. "Hey, that life training of yours. One day you'll actually explain it." Nadia almost smiled. "Maybe." He grinned. "I'll hold you to that." Then he was gone. Silence. Finally, in a room where, 3 hours ago, a dozen people had already decided everything about her. Same walls, same floor, same overhead lights, everything else different. She took one slow breath. Not relief, not triumph. Just the quiet of something finished. Then her phone buzzed. "Mom, did you get it?" Nadia looked at the screen for a moment, then typed back, "Yeah." 3 dots appeared instantly. Then, "I knew it." "Coming home soon?" Nadia picked up her bag and walked toward the door. "Yeah," she typed. "On my way." She slipped the phone into her pocket, stepped outside, and felt the Houston heat settle over her like something familiar, like something that had always been hers. The city didn't care what happened in that room. Traffic moved. Somewhere 2 blocks over, music was coming out of someone's car. The world was exactly where she'd left it, but her shoulders were lower than they'd been in years. Because this was never about proving them wrong. It was about building something right for the person who believed in her before any room ever did. Here's what I want to leave you with, because this story has been sitting with me, and I need to say it plainly. The most dangerous thing in a high-stakes room is not the person who seems out of place. It's the assumption that out of place means unqualified. Nadia was never confused about her own ability. The room was confused about its criteria. And that gap between being unseen and being invisible is something a lot of people carry around every single day without the language to name it. Drake's mistake wasn't aggression. Aggression can be useful. His mistake was deciding before the data came in. He reached a conclusion and then went looking for confirmation. That's not evaluation. That's performance. And in real protective work, in real leadership, in real decision-making under pressure, that mistake is catastrophic. What Nadia understood that nobody else in that room did was this. The room's opinion of you and your actual capability are 2 completely separate things. Only one of them matters when it counts. The practical thing you can take from this today, right now, from wherever you're sitting, is to ask yourself which one you're building, reputation or actual skill. Because reputation gets tested. Skill survives the test. And if you've been in rooms where people look past you, here's the question I want you to sit with. Did their verdict change what you did next? Because Nadia never let it. Not once. Drop a 1-inch the comments if you think Nadia was right to stay silent at the beginning. Drop a 2 if you think she should have spoken up sooner. Drop a 3 if Drake's final moment, "You're good," said quietly, and honestly changed how you felt about him. I want to know, because I genuinely think option 3 is the most interesting conversation, and I want to hear where you land. Where are you watching from right now? What time is it there? And have you ever stood in a room like that one where the verdict came down before you moved a muscle? Tell me in the comments. I read them. That's not something I just say. If this story hit something real for you, please subscribe. We tell stories here that are worth your time, stories that aren't just entertainment but carry something you can actually use. I'd be glad to have you here. This is a fictional story inspired by real emotional experiences. Fully rewritten and reimagined in Houston, Texas, to create original content. Any resemblance to real people or events is coincidental.